Welcome, everyone, to Story Players. This is a podcast where we regale what it's like to live in the moment of video games, giving you a bit of a time capsule of the story of those who play. And here to tell that story is myself, Zachary Snader, and my beautiful co-host here, Buddy Powell. Hello, buddy.
Pleasure to be here.
How was that?
Very nice. I like that. Was good. I like that. Yeah.
6.8 out of 9.
Good. No. Yeah. Good 6.8 for sure. Yeah. That was good.
All right.
I like the. It definitely has the message what we're going for in there.
Cool.
It's
Okay.
Not too theatrical.
Excellent. That's what I was going for. Yeah, man. How you doing though? How you doing?
Doing great. Been actually getting back into more games recently. I took a break. I made that tutorial for Patreon, and so I just gave myself a little break yesterday.
That was deep. It's a deep tutorial.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I had a hard time making that tutorial. It was hard to record. If you actually pay attention to because I recorded my whole screen. If you look at the clock, you'll see the clock go from, I started, I think, at like 10 or something, and I finished at like 5 p.m.
Okay.
I mean, I took a break for lunch and stuff, but like it was a struggle to record that thing.
Huh.
It was like 40 minutes of footage that I had to cut down. No, probably an hour of footage that I cut down into 40 minutes. Or maybe it was more. Maybe it was like 2 hours. I don't know. But yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it. I don't know if you've seen it yet. A nice little overview of, yeah,
I haven't watched
just
the full
of
thing
like
yet.
a workflow process for me, for my stuff. Happy to have that done because people always ask me stuff like that, and I'm not prepared to answer. I usually have to spend some time writing up a whole thing for them every time, and now I can just point them to a video. Right now it's paywalled, like it's in Patreon, but I'm gonna do a little post about that and make sure people know about it, that it's there, so they can maybe jump on the Patreon train.
Nice.
Help me out a little bit.
All right.
But yeah, that was fun. I mean, I say it was hard and it was tough, but it was also like fun and rewarding to like finish the tutorial.
Cool.
Because it's a nice one. I liked it. It came out good. And yeah, I've been playing. Yeah, so I took a break and I started playing Thronebreaker, the single player Gwent Witcher card game.
Oh, okay.
RPG.
Yeah.
Because it is a bite-sized like game you can just play an hour or so and then hop out because it's just card stuff, single player PvE stuff. And I love the art for that game. I love the art for Gwent, and it's just as well for this Thronebreaker game too. It's very nice.
Cool.
So yeah, I actually feel like I'm an actual gamer again instead of just working all the time and thinking about games.
Nice. That's great.
But what about you? How have you been?
Still sick.
Still sick. Yeah.
So that's cool. Yeah, just on and off with the kiddo all the time, getting sick. Besides that, yeah, it's been like kind of a weird week. I had a really interesting call with an advisor just before we spoke last week that we didn't really talk about, and I think it kind of like threw me for a loop in terms of my direction, and spent a couple of days not quite aimless, but trying to figure out like what I wanted to do about that. And
I find some new footing.
yeah, well, so the game that I'm working on is like actually making forward progress, which is pretty cool. We have a crappy little playable demo that's, I don't mean crappy as like judging it. It's more of just like, it's got like some of it's very, 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 very basic. But it's got like some rudimentary AI and stuff in there, and got another dev that came on who's a little bit more like new to development, who's helping with some of these systems, and yeah, it's cool. I spent 2 hours debugging the other day, which was really fun because I haven't like dove into code with another person in like 3 months, and I'm still pretty novice when it comes to coding, but it was fun to actually be able to look through the code and be like, hang on, I can ask real specific questions about why this might not be working. And
Nice.
that was a good feeling.
There you go.
Yeah, so I helped an engineer with debugging, which was cool.
Wow.
And then I'm also supporting another developer working on their game and getting
Oh
it
yeah.
ready for like a pitch submission in the next month. So that's been pretty
Is
cool
that
too.
someone local or is that someone you met online?
Someone that I got introduced to through one of the people that was on my project. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he's also building out like his own studio and building his own game. And part of the thing I realized is like I want to help other developers get their projects to market. So I'm doing a bit more of that these days, where my project is kind of
Nice.
taking a backseat. So
So
I'm
is that
trying to
more
help other devs.
advising, would you say, that you're doing with the other?
I'm doing like actual design work, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
doing QA, helping with connecting to resources, and I'm also trying to help them figure out how to like actually submit their project for grant consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like a prized award kind of thing. Um, but yeah, trying to figure that out too. So doing
Awesome.
some
Sounds like
businessy
project manager
stuff,
type
and
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool to wear a bunch of different hats. I got to code and
Yeah.
design and do business stuff this week, which is a lot of
You
fun.
get your hands dirty and you also do the higher level stuff. Very cool.
Getting my hands dirty and doing higher level
Very
stuff. And
nice.
and I was driving Lyft this week, which was the
You're
least favorite part, but
driving a lift.
driving Lyft, the ride
What
share.
what is that? I don't know what that is.
Ride share. Have you taken an Uber ever?
Oh, Lyft,
Lyft,
the
Lyft.
business.
Trying to bring in near-term income to make sure my
That's
family can
cool.
eat. It's necessary, dude. I had to do a pickup outside of like I don't know what the fentanyl crisis is like in Brazil, if it even has touched Brazil at all, but it's really bad
Is that
in the
is
States.
that acid? What is that?
No,
Fentanyl?
it's an opioid,
An
but
opioid.
it's
I'm sure it's pretty
extremely
popular.
addictive and highly lethal as well. Um, and it's been spreading around a lot of major cities out here, and it's starting to hit Denver like pretty bad in certain areas. So I had to do a pickup outside of a McDonald's, which is in this like it's probably one of the most hood McDonald's in the entire Denver area. And there were people just geeked out like in the parking
Mm.
lot looking like zombies. And I was like, dude, I okay, that was the moment for me where I'm like, I need to have some form of protection in my vehicle
I
if I'm
need
going
like
to
a
be doing this.
plexiglass window behind me.
Seriously. I have
Yeah,
car
McDonald's
insurance,
parking lot is
luckily.
a great place for opiates.
Yeah, but not picking people up. It turns out. Um,
Sheesh.
yeah,
Well, yeah, be careful out there for sure. But that's cool. Like, I hear a lot of people really enjoy that kind of work, get to meet new people, and just I don't know. Driving is fun and relaxing. In if you're kind of predisposed to that sort of thing. So
I mean it's
very
it's kind of
nice.
nice. I can listen to like podcasts when I have an extended ride, or just jam with
Yeah.
music when I got people in the car.
Hmm.
It's all right.
Do you
Um,
do anything gimmicky? Like, do you leave little chocolates in the back or something for people?
no, but I am going to have lotion in the car because it's really
Yeah.
dry out here. It's so
Oh.
dry, dude. Lotion. If like the world were to burn and Denver was like left to its own defenses or something, I feel like food, water, shelter, and then lotion would be like the fourth thing you need. Otherwise, your
Yeah.
skin's just gonna like dry up.
Sheesh, gets dry out there, huh?
It's a semi-arid climate, so like we get all this snow.
Uh,
We're right by the mountains, but
mhm.
yeah, there's just no humidity
I
anywhere outside of that.
remember my last day in the United States was a winter, and it gets, it just gets dry when it's cold. And I remember I had like freezer burn on my wrists 'cause I was plowing the driveway, and the cold was just drying my wrists, and they just turned raw and red. I must have been wearing gloves. Maybe I wasn't. But I remember it was funny because that day I took the plane to Brazil, and so the next day I still had like freezer burn, like wind burn on my hands, but I was in this tropical, tropical like humid what do you call it? Climate and ambience.
At least you could heal up pretty quick. Get that
Yeah, it was
nice
just funny
tropical.
to be like, yeah, I have this problem from the snow, but there's no snow here. Like it doesn't even think about snowing here.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
That's
Anyway,
that's how I felt when I was living in Germany and flew back to Phoenix, like it was almost freezing the day before, and then you get off the airplane,
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
weird.
scorching hot. Yeah,
Like it's weird
different
thinking
world.
about like our organism, like how it deals with just going from air conditioning to just the hot. Like does that's not natural. That can't be good for us.
No, I try
Just
not to
that
use air
shock.
conditioning anymore. Anyway, weather. How's the weather? Um,
Yeah, enough about air conditioning. Let's talk about video games. This is a video game podcast after all.
all right, so I did some. I had kind of a back and forth on my topics for this week. Like I had one for a while, and then last night I was like, wait, I don't know if this is actually a very engaging conversation. It was more of just like a question,
Honestly,
and not like a
honestly, I
super.
feel like
It wasn't a super deep one like your least favorite genre one was, though. I don't think.
right.
So
I felt like that was a very shallow one. I thought that's why I built it up in such a way where it was like, there's all this stuff happening. I just want to know what your favorite game is. What's your favorite game?
okay, well, so I was thinking of an
But we
alternative
talked about it for an
question.
hour or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm debating.
I
I
think
kind of want to tell you what both of them are.
well, I'm not going to pick one. We're going to
Okay.
talk about all of it. If you meant, just save one for next week then, and just talk about one that you want to know now.
Okay, maybe I will just do the question then, and I'll try not to judge it too harshly before it even is out
No,
there.
don't, because we can. If anything, we're the professional stretch for time folks. Like,
For
I
real.
could talk about one thing forever. You know, like we just got done talking about air conditioning and stuff for the past 20 minutes or whatever, whatever we're talking about.
That's true.
Or 10
I can
minutes.
talk about air
whatever it's been.
conditioning all day.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay. Should I kick off again then? We're kind of going in that direction.
You're the
anyway, huh?
host. You're the host, so you get to decide. It is
Okay.
rude to let the guest not go first, though. No, I'm
Okay.
just kidding. Go ahead.
All
Go.
right. Well, I don't
want
know.
you to
You seem eager to go.
flipping go, Zach.
All right. Okay. So, where to begin with this one? All right, so it's about like content creators and who you watch and why you watch them. I was trying to think back of like who some of the early creator actually like if I go all the way back, some of the earliest creators I watched were like probably G4 as far as like watching gaming creators. And I think that counts, right? Like they were making content about video games. It was on a linear channel,
Content.
but still.
Yeah, I think when they left, I think when you're on TV, it's not content; it's just a show. And when you're on YouTube, like G4 is on YouTube now. Now they make content, but back then they were just producing a show.
For sure,
TV show.
I think okay, so that's a good call. But like what I was getting at is, I enjoyed watching G4 because it was like content, whatever, about video games, right? And that was
It spoke to
18,
us,
19
yes.
years ago at this point. And then as like YouTube and Twitch kind of came up, I think a lot of the content that I watched early on was probably around like the early-ish 2000s, and I watched a lot of game reviewers, and then I kind of got into like Game Informer, but that's because I'd read Game Informer. And then anyway, like I've like had these phases of watching a certain creator and then kind of like phasing into another person. There's not a ton of creators that I've like watched their content for a really long period of time. I think Giant Bomb was probably the one where I watched their content regularly for the better part of a decade until I kind of fell off. And then now it's like a hodgepodge of, shows about the games industry, shows about games development, or creators that focus on those things, and like some let's play creators and like some speedrunners kind of mixed in. But I wanted to talk to you about this because I recently found someone that I really resonate with their content. It sounds so like so weird to use content as just like their content. Like they're making videos about video games. It's
when I
an
say
easy
content,
descriptor.
I'm being ironic when I say content because like there are people who produce for the sake of making content to fill their channel with stuff every day. But like you said, the people who we follow, like it becomes more than content to us, right? Like it is technically content. Like you're right, G4 was content. There's nothing wrong with content, like, but it's just the connotation it has now. So I say it in kind of a semi-sardonic way. Yeah, there's totally people producing quality content out there that I consider evergreen, very valuable, and I, so nothing against that.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
I was just being sarcastic.
No, for sure. I like your use of sardonic. I hear that word like once every 3 years, and it makes me happy to hear it.
Pop the champagne.
Yeah, I think the like No Clip and Skill Up and Game Maker's Toolkit and this one channel called About Oliver. Like those are the ones that I'm kind of gravitating towards now. Oh, and I guess Video Game Donkey. Donkey's funny. I've just like I was trying to think about why it was that I was starting to watch those creators more.
Mhm.
Because like I used to watch this one speedrunner regularly. His name's Anthony Caliber. Like he's a Last of Us speedrunner. And I like his style. He just kind of like boots up. He goes. It's nice like ASMR kind of background noise. I don't know. I think he's a cool dude. And it's not even like Last of Us is my favorite game. I like it, but I just like it was just cool to watch, you know.
Mhm.
But now I'm like, okay, now I want to watch content that's more about game development and hearing other people talking about the industry. But also like I think I was longing for some of that like more more chill thing that I sort of lost when I fell off of watching Anthony Caliber stuff. So I started watching this guy About Oliver because he started to play Minecraft blind, like he knew nothing about the game. And for anyone that
Mm.
knows anything about Minecraft, like the depth of that game is insane, you know.
Mhm.
Um, it's a mile wide and a mile deep. Like there's a
Yeah.
ton to do in Minecraft. And he went into it determined to get to the end credits without looking anything up. And I don't know, as someone who just casually got into Minecraft like a few years ago and didn't really play seriously up until a few months ago, that seems insane. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is cool. I'm going to follow this journey. And then he did a similar thing with Outer Wilds, where he just went into Outer Wilds blind. Um, I did the same thing with Outer Wilds because I didn't want that experience to be ruined. So, did you ever play Outer Wilds, by the way?
No, but I've seen a let's play of it and I know about it. It is kind of
Okay.
like a mist sort of thing, like kind of a puzzly sort of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Exploratory, open-ended.
There's been this like strange secondary gameplay experience within the Outer Wilds community where
Oh yeah.
players of the game will watch first time players like sometimes on Twitch or sometimes pre-recorded like what about Oliver did um, because it's so cool to see how other people go about their experience compared to the way that you did. And it's also really cool to
Right.
see them like unlock the mystery of it all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I recorded myself playing Fez a few times and there were some moments where I figured out a puzzle just like completely of my own volition. I felt so smart and I was just like it was just such a good feeling. That feeling of like unlocking a puzzle and figuring things out on your own
Yeah.
and
I can imagine
seeing.
like
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I can imagine like watching because once you've played a game like that, kind of the cat's out of the bag for a lot of those
Exactly.
things. Like you have your wow moments, but it is a puzzle game, so you kind of like if you were to play it again, you'd just be going through the paces. So you kind of to enjoy the game to that level again or get something out of it again, other than just the straightforward kind of enjoyment of just playing, you gotta vicariously play it through another person,
Right.
and so you can see like, especially if they're talking their thought process through, you can kind of giggle at them being misdirected or share in that wow moment again. It's totally like that vicarious enjoyment sort of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, for specifically puzzle games, I can totally see that. Yeah.
So I was trying to unpack why I was gravitating towards this stuff so that I could understand myself better as a game enjoyer and a game content enjoyer, you know?
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
So I guess I've kind of gone through that exercise over the past week or so, like trying to identify what it was that led me to kind of fall into the current content hole of sorts that I'm in now, where I'm like
Mm-hmm.
pretty specific about watching these gaming creators. And yeah, I don't know. Like I've never really considered the evolution of that journey of me as a consumer of content rather than a creator of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because generally when we think about like our careers or our history with games, it's like, all right, what did you play and what did you make, not what did you watch. So now I'm thinking like, all
Right.
right, what did I watch? Like, what's the passive experience that I'm having that kind of rounds
Mm-hmm.
out my direct engagement with the industry and my direct engagement with video games. Um, so that's I don't know what the question is there, outside of like
Okay.
why do you follow the creators that you follow? Because the reason for me at least has changed over time. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
reflective of who I've become as a person and as a game developer and as a video game player and enjoyer. Like the content is reflective of that journey for me, is what I think the kind of like sum total thought is. So I'm curious what
Yeah.
that is for you and like what your journey has been.
Well, now that you mentioned that, I think the specific fact that we are part of the industry to some degree gives us kind of more of an arc in what we consume. Like, I think your average person who's just looking because they're curious about games, they're just fascinated to see what games look like. They'll find a personality online or something that who they like, and they'll follow them, and maybe they like the games that they play as well. And that might be kind of a linear kind of progression where they just jump around between creators who are making funnier and funnier videos or whatever, more interesting videos. I think kind of you get a fork in the road when you say, man, you know what? Human beings made this thing that I'm enjoying. It's not just something I got. I want to learn a little bit more about the development side. I want a little more insight in that. And then maybe you branch off into a sector where they're talking more about the process or maybe mentioning more as a grain of salt kind of idea in their conversation, like what went into making this game. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people who play games, they're just playing at face value and their reactions are like just laughing at a glitch or just marveling at the graphics or something. And I think that's that's enough for a lot of people. It is, sometimes it's just enough for me as well. Like, cause games are just fascinating to look at. It's just like a toy for your eyes to look at. But there's that extra level once you start working in the game industry, when you get close to that stuff, like certain content doesn't work anymore for me. Like when I see people just like glitch compilations, laughing at stuff or whatever, just goofing around, it's good fun, but like their bewilderment at the glitch kind of is annoying a little bit to me because
Okay.
I can see like I know exactly what's happening here. This is definitely something that should be fixed. Blah blah blah, and I think earlier on because we went to college for game development, and so like early on, maybe earlier than before I turned 18, I was already curious about game development, so I was
Yep.
already looking into that stuff. But if I think way back to when I was just a little kid in high school, just consuming games essentially. I would go on like game trailers and just watch what the latest game is, just to because I was interested in games. But I would never think like there's human beings developing these games or doing anything like that. So I think when I went to college for it, I then started branching off and started thinking about like what's the production of this like. What actually goes into making it? Because you're forced to learn that stuff in college anyway, or when you're learning game development. So I mean, early on, that kind of veered my focus towards more development conscious creators who are making content. So I respect and I appreciate it when a fun YouTuber or Twitch person has a skill outside of just being charismatic on their videos.
Okay.
So, for example, I tend to gravitate more towards creators who have a distinct like personality, maybe even like a background in improv comedy. Like I respect that more. I appreciate that more. And I found myself following more people who are more improv savvy because they can have more fun banter. They do stand up. A lot of the people I follow actually do stand up, and I think that's just a fun thing. And then more focused on like game development stuff. I follow a lot of people like Digital Foundry. I love watching their videos because they're dissecting like the software end of things and actually looking at the mechanics of the game and the different rendering like stuff. I can't follow all of it. Even being a game developer, a lot of it is crazy. But I appreciate seeing that, and I like being aware of certain things. I like knowing what DLSR is, or DLLS. What is it? Deep learning super sampling, whatever it's called. I like learning about this stuff. Not that I use it or I am exposed to that, but I like learning, staying on top of the industry in that way. Yeah, so I think that really veered my interest to actually following people who are more than just two-dimensional. Like they have other skills. And to layer on top of that, to add another layer of complexity, because I am so familiar with the industry, I tend to not seek out video game content like as much anymore. Like I love Abroad in Japan. I just like Japan. So Abroad in Japan, Chris Broad is an expat who lives in Japan. He does kind of documentary style stuff. Very well produced videos nowadays, like very highly produced. All about Japan. He doesn't talk about video games at all. I like looking up random facts about history, stuff like that. So like I tend to veer away from purely video game stuff. And so I more appreciate it when maybe when someone's talking about video games, they have a background in something else. Like I give them a little bit more of my attention. Yeah. If they have more going for them than just I like video game. I just appreciate that more. But then, like I said, video games are fascinating. Sometimes I'll just go on Twitch or YouTube and look up a game that I have no interest in buying, but just to see how it's working and see what it looks like. Maybe it has a cool art direction or something. So I end up just watching stuff like flippantly on YouTube, especially on the TV. I'm not lugged in on TV, so I'll just watch whatever. Because I'm the type of person who goes and takes care of my history in YouTube. I delete things. I don't know if you do this too. But if I watch something I didn't like, I'll delete it from my history so YouTube doesn't recommend stuff.
Yeah, I can't say I do that.
I'm very OCD about like, because YouTube, it tries to recommend things and it does an okay job. But I get so mad if I start seeing like, I don't know, Markiplier or PewDiePie stuff in there, like normie stuff. But yeah, like... I guess that's really where I land nowadays. I did have kind of an arc in that respect. Okay. I guess I could name drop some things, but that's not very useful if people don't know. But Digital Foundry is really big. I watch some of their stuff. I used to follow the Easy Allies and Game Trailers before that, like when Game Trailers dispersed and became Easy Allies. But now I just follow Kyle Bossman, who was once on Game Trailers, once on Easy Allies, and now it's just solo.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what his like thing was, because I remember you talked about him specifically. That's the only person I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But
Did you end up looking him up?
I watched like a few minutes of one video back when you first showed me.
His take, because he's funny. He's a good like comedian. He's also a really good creator. He's created a series called Box Peak, which is like a Pokemon inspired series. It's got like 12 episodes or something like that. Okay. Maybe less, maybe 6 episodes. I respect really creative people and when they show their creativity in a certain way. So I follow him because I like that he's also just a creative person. He's not just a pundit on video games. Mm-hmm. But then he's also got a really specific kind of cynical type of humor that I really like. Pretty goofy. But yeah, I think at this stage I land on the more meta, like people who are looking at video games from a more meta standpoint, maybe like they're considering the industry, maybe more cynical as well. Like, and I've also gotten into like very frenetic video editing. Like people are always trying really hard to like really edit their videos down to make them really tight and make them really active. But I don't know if you know this creator. His name is Ranton. He started doing video game reviews. His whole thing is that he was once a Shaolin monk, like for real. Okay. A Shaolin disciple, I should say. Yeah, and then so he has that experience, and then he went on to YouTube to start his YouTube career after that because he left the temple and he started doing that. So he's a really interesting guy. Like in general, he can still do the movements as much as he can manage nowadays. So like interesting background. and he's got an interesting take on video games. And his videos are just off the wall, like crazy. And he's got like really bad, like sick jokes in there that are just I find hilarious. Very alternative feeling. And similarly, I watch this newer YouTuber named Chromerot. He's from Serbia. He's a Serbian YouTuber. He's more of just a YouTube video game fan, but he's also got a different sense of humor, just very different from other people. And like his videos are very funny the way they're edited, and he's got a very like meta take on video games and more cynical as well, I would say. And he's in that stage where he's like, I don't know, I just relate to the guy, you know, like he's in a nostalgic kind of, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where I land, I think, nowadays with what I'm watching now. Definitely more of the alternative group, like not just looking for, like Video Game Donkey. I had to stop watching his videos because his bit got old for me. Just playing and reacting to the video game. It's just not enough for me.
But he sometimes has like really good reviews through that style, right? Because that lens. I do understand where you're coming from, though.
Like you mentioned the reviews, and I just can't agree on that. Just personally, like I just can't watch his reviews either. His reviews are just so superficial to me.
Okay.
Not to say they're not valid or valuable. Like I think he does draw a lot of good points out of that. And I'm speaking like subjectively, like that's all personal opinion. But I just don't gel with him anymore. Like he didn't like mature yet. He hasn't matured yet, is what I feel.
Okay.
Like his videos are just gameplay videos reacting. And I can totally tell he just records his video and then he goes back and adds voice over afterwards.
Okay.
So I know his reactions aren't always genuine. They're just him making jokes. I can see through it a little too much, and it doesn't offer as much. Like that. This is all personal. I don't do it. But
no, that's interesting because at least specifically with Donkey, because I think he is able to show a slice of a game that would be like the most distilled experience for any prospective player of that game. It is almost like the voice in the back of your head as you're thinking about what you're thinking when you're playing that game. So I think in that respect it still works, though I do feel you on, like, I don't watch all of his stuff, you know, but I am curious to like check out some of the things he has here and there because they do kind of show what the game is.
No, and he definitely takes like what's that YouTuber Crobat, the guy who does all those documentary style things. He takes like a cynical look at the games, and a lot of times it's a little hard for me to take Donkey seriously. I don't think he intends for people to take him that seriously anyway. But he does dissect games in that way. Like if a game launches poorly, he'll show it in kind of a sarcastic way in his video. Like he'll highlight it in that way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with his videos. Just personal. It's a personal thing at this point. Like I've essentially got off the train, the Donkey train. I also have this like hipster part of me that's like, oh, he's got millions of followers. Like, I don't want to watch him. Like even with Chris Abroad,
creators. Okay,
the Abroad in Japan guy, I started watching him when he was just growing his channel, and now he's got millions and millions of subscriptions and millions of views on all his videos, and I just feel like I don't need to be there anymore. You know.
Okay.
It's totally hipster thing. It's not justifiable. It's just a hipster thing. I will go back occasionally and binge watch a lot of his stuff because it is very well produced, and he actually does series where he goes on trips, like big tours, and makes a set of videos, like a series of videos. So if you're into Japan at all, I definitely recommend Abroad in Japan because his videos are top quality YouTube videos. Like they're so good. They're so well produced, and he really has a professionalism that you just don't see on YouTube, while also just being really funny and like in that British way where it's kind of like self-deprecating.
Okay. I do
check
think
it out. I just love Japan. I don't know.
I'll take a look. I do think it's interesting that you mentioned that like the creator grew to a size where you felt like you didn't need to be there. Like I've actually had a similar feeling before. Like I didn't check
fair,
out,
but
no. I mean it's not, but at the same time, it's kind of like I don't know if it's fair to them. Maybe it's not fair to you because you're kind of like it colors your experience with how you engage with the content because you're like, do I really need to be looking at this? Because this person doesn't need my time her attention. I mean, they're going
Also,
to benefit from it, but also it kind of comes down to like, all right, now is this even for me? Is the question that you get
I
to, I
did.
think.
I get this feeling like when a YouTuber kind of ascends in that way, they kind of they cultivate a culture and a friend group essentially where they have all these in jokes and people who are subscribed and they're paying for it. They get different emojis and they're more part of the conversation. And so you kind of see this group of people kind of walk away from you. Like he's over there with his friends, they get all the in jokes. It's like a high school drama. Like you're friends with this kid, but then he gets really popular and goes off and he's popular with his own little group over there. And I just feel like I'm not part of the conversation anymore necessarily. Whereas like maybe I had a chance at being that in the past. But now they're just so popular. They have their own friend group, all these in jokes, in memes. Maybe they even have a paywall community, like a Discord that's paid only, or
Yeah,
like a Patreon and so they get more of the one-to-one kind of experience with that creator, and they feel more attached to the creator. But like I would never, like I have never, not that I would never, but I have never like gotten that close to a creator to where I would stick around for that process. And so they kind of
yeah.
leave me in the dust, and I'm like, okay, let this kind of sunset, and I'll just be enjoying them from afar. And even though I never comment on videos, but I still feel that way. I never leave comments on videos or anything like that. The most I do is like a video if I really liked it. But not that I really truly engage, but there's something there when it's a small community, you still feel like a bigger part of it. And
Yeah.
then when it grows to a size, you feel like kind of insignificant. And then at that point, just kind of check out.
For sure. For
Or
sure.
be more passive anyway.
No, that's super interesting, man. I feel like I've felt that more with streamers than with VOD creators. Because there is a point in, I guess the current streaming meta and the streaming meta for a while now has been like, you get big enough to where you're primarily engaging with other big streamers. As opposed to, I don't know, at least most VOD creators, it's kind of like, all right, you're just making this stuff on your own for your audience. You're not making
Right.
it to make content with other creators all the time, you know? Like
Yeah.
I've kind of fallen off of streaming entirely for that reason. Like there's only a
Wait, did you
few.
stream before, or
I used
are you
to,
just
but
watching stream?
more of even like watching streamers though.
Mm-hmm.
There's only like one or two that I will check out on even a relatively consistent basis, which is like once every couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I think that's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
Yeah, man,
I never
and
really got into streaming for some reason.
that's okay. there's a lot of stuff going on out there.
That's
Streaming,
the other thing is there's
YouTube.
just so much content out there.
Yes.
That, I mean, you got to pick your battles. You got to pick who you're gonna stick with. There's just too many options.
Yeah.
And also, like, it turns out that a lot of the people I do follow are from game trailers or kind of associated with game trailers. Remember Game Trailers, the website, like way back in and they turned into a YouTube channel, and then from there became Easy Allies, and now a lot of those people went over to, like Elise Willems. I don't know if you know her. She went over to Funhouse, and I started watching Funhouse. Now Funhouse is dispersed, and they're going to go off to do their own things.
Rest in peace, Rooster Teeth.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like they're going to be making better stuff like under different umbrellas, because there's a lot of good talent there. Speaking of Funhouse, there's a lot of great talent there, but I thought their videos were lacking because they were forced to make so much content so often that their content became really superficial. Maybe some funny jokes in there or whatever, but they really have some great, highly produced videos that they made, or series that they had. That wasn't just gameplay, but they had like actual shows. And I want that. I want to see more of that kind of stuff, because that was where they're really shining. But anyways, yeah. So like I found that a lot of that stuff originated from game trailers, where I kind of just got my first stepping stone, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I don't explore that much. If I see a recommended video and I watch and I like it, I might follow up with another. Like that's how I found Ranton. He's just a random person I found. Like he reviewed a game. I think he reviewed like For Honor when I was getting into For Honor.
Oh, what? You played For Honor?
Oh, dude, have you?
Yeah, I thought, dude, I thought For Honor was sick.
Love For Honor.
I played it at E3
No, I
like
loved
10
For
years
Honor.
ago or something, and that was the most fun I had playing a game.
No, it's
a multiplayer
a
game that year.
genius game.
Yeah.
It's an amazing multiplayer. Like no other multiplayer has a fighting system so interesting and so engaging. I love For Honor, but I hate Ubisoft, so I can't play it.
I know, right? It's hard to separate the art from the artist on that one.
For me in particular, like that. I mean, that's the thing is the artists like whatever. I don't know them, but like the artists do great work over at Ubisoft. Like they do amazing stuff over there, and the game designer and for that game in particular. There's like a Netflix documentary or an Amazon documentary or something about that game designer for Honor.
Huh.
And it is a sad story. It's like a melancholic story because he made this thing and then he got fired. And they're just he wanted to make a sequel for For Honor, but they're just turning it into they turned it into a live service. Really interesting case in general, and it really shows like kind of the atmosphere of that studio. Anyway, yeah, I love For Honor. It's so cool, and it just looks awesome. It still looks great. Art direction is so good. It's such a shame. The biggest reason I can't play it is because the servers are so slow here in Brazil. Like they're just not.
Okay.
You can't connect to a game. I waited like 20 minutes for a game once, but yeah, that game is genius. I love that game. I wish I could play it. I wish I could bring myself to play it. Even.
I wonder if I could pick it up and we could play together. That'd be fun.
I tried playing with friends once, but because it's so tactical and so methodical while you're playing, I couldn't talk to my friends while I played.
Yeah, I feel that.
I had to only be talking about the game. I had to be like, get to the point. Like I had to be on because that game requires you to be on. Yeah. Otherwise, you're gonna get owned. Yeah, For Honor is such a like. I wish it was just a premium. You paid for it and it was just online or offline, like whatever type of game.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a live service game really turns me off. But that's the only reason it's still around, right? So it's kind of like pick your poison sort of thing.
What a weird transition. I haven't said the words For Honor out loud in like 9 years.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it's been running for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
No, For Honor's great, man. Love that game.
All right. Well, besides For Honor, that is more or less the topic. I think there's more to unpack there. This is why I was kind of hesitant about the question because it is hard to like. It's hard to talk about you and your specific behavior without like going deep into individual creators. And I wasn't sure if like for those folks that are listening right now is like, would that even be engaging to think about? But
that's the thing. Like we ended up talking about channels who people probably don't even know about. Yeah, but also at the same time, like you want to recommend channels to people because that's what they want. They want people to talk to them.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I was really curious about other people's journeys with engaging with content creation though. So it was cool to hear like that you fell off of Donkey, right? Like I think that's really interesting.
Oh yeah.
Because it does run in parallel with you exploring other interests and falling deeper into content that is about more of like game creation in the industry as opposed to just like here's a guy playing video games, right? And I think that reflects on who you are as a person and a developer. Like you're not just a video game player, you're a creator and you also enjoy other things about life outside of making video games.
Yeah, I really feel kind of like vindicated enjoying things outside of video games. Like I said, I listen to video game podcasts, but at the same time I'll jump into like this podcast called Ship Hits the Fan where they talk about boat tragedy history. And so like I feel like I can kind of get out of that world of video games where it's really a microcosm of sometimes a lot of drama and a lot of like struggle in the games industry and a lot of things that get you frustrated if you stay there. And so I like just taking a break and be like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to the Game Trailers podcast or a video game thing. I'm going to listen to Come Town and just hear what they have to say about like random stuff.
Yeah. And
like that's a podcast with comedians just talking about sometimes they mention video games and in those cases you're like, oh, I know about video games. They have video games. That's another thing. Like, but they're also like they're in a different like world altogether. So yeah. I mean, YouTube channels are totally personal. Like when I log into YouTube, I see a different home screen than when Bianca logs in. Yeah. Her home screen is like really wholesome and just like full of people giving good advice. And then mine is just like all those like reaction thumbnails and stuff.
That was a good reaction.
And it just makes me mad.
Maybe we could use that.
That'll have to be our thumbnail. Yeah.
All right.
It's a cool topic.
Yeah. Cool, man. Thanks for indulging me.
What is that? Do you want to like play it safe and dip out now, or do you want to do my topic?
me check my
Check
phone
the
real
phone.
quick. We can edit this out. Okay, my wife has still not texted me. Well, I don't really know what that means. I no, let's go for it. Let's go for it.
Yeah, gamer forever.
Dude, I tried calling a few times. It didn't happen. So if she
Okay.
needed me right now, she would have called me back. So I think we're okay.
All right. I'm afraid for you, but at the same time,
I'm
let's
also a
talk
little
about
bit
that
afraid for
topic.
myself. This is kind of me convincing myself that it's okay.
No, keep an eye out on the phone. If something happens, we can always tune it off. So,
Okay.
all right, let's
All
start the
right.
next phase.
Transition. That was the transition music. Oh, your
Yeah.
mic just. Oh, okay. Your mic's good now. It cut out for a
Oh,
sec.
it's fine.
All right. We're good. Nope. Just cut out again.
Something. No, it's fine.
Now
It
it's
didn't cut
good.
out. It's fine.
All right.
It's fine.
It's
It's
fine.
fine. You can hear me, right?
Yep. Now we're good.
Good. Because I didn't do anything.
I know. That's just
Plus, I
how it
unplugged
is.
it. Maybe
Now you're
it's
good.
I got a loose wire or something. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Um,
What are you bringing to the table this week, buddy?
I actually brought a show and tell thing. So let me just.
Ooh. All right.
Okay, so have you ever heard of Dishonored, the Dishonored series?
Yeah.
It's a
The
stealth
arcane
action
games. Yeah.
first person. Yeah,
Immersive
arcade kind of like
semi.
Victorian
Yep.
era steampunk. Very cool games. Just fun combat, great atmosphere, really cool world. I played through all of it. I played the first one and the whole second one, and also the Death of the Outsider. I think it's called like an expansion, like a
Okay.
standalone expansion.
Was that an
Uh,
expansion for the first or the second one?
The second one.
Okay.
The first one, I didn't play any of the expansions. I didn't even know it had expansions when I played it. The reason why I think I got into it originally was because a lot of people not a lot of people, I think the art director or something, or maybe a designer or two from Valve who were working on Half-Life 3 or whatever, left to go to Arcane, and they created Dishonored. So there's a lot of blood there. Maybe not a lot. There's a couple artists. There's a couple people there from. I know the art director or one of the artists from Half-Life 2 was the art director for Dishonored, and so it has a lot of distinct, like, the art direction in general, if you remember, is very distinct. It's got a cool style to it. Yeah, so the atmosphere of the world, very cool. Like I said, I played all of it. Really excited for the second one. Second one is gorgeous. If you haven't played it yet, it's really pretty. But it wasn't until the second one that I ran across the world map, like the lore world, like the entire world of Dishonored
Okay.
has a globe, and it is a very unique globe. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like our world with like United States, North America, Asia. It's a very unique in that the Isles is where you play when you're playing Dishonored. You play on the Isles, which looks like Great Britain, sort of. It's just like a little island where you play. There's the Southern Islands, which are more tropical and whatnot. So that's where you know as far as the game is concerned. But there's another part of the map, and I realized this when I was playing Dishonored 2, because they have globes everywhere that you can spin in the environment, because it's a very like regal kind of society that you're going through in those games. So everyone has globes in their house and their studies and stuff, and telescopes and stuff. There's the Isles, which is a speck on the globe, and then the rest of the globe is this giant continent, and you're like, what the hell is that? And you only learn about it if you listen to lore or maybe some dialogue. But as a continent, it's like 100 times bigger than the Isles where you actually play, where civilized society exists in this world. It's called the Pandician continent, and it is a completely unexplored or mostly unexplored part of the world. It's basically dwarfs the known world as far as the people who inhabit Dishonored understand. And it is this lost world, giant continent with like dinosaurs and Mothmen and witches and magic. And it was so inspiring because you actually, if you're paying attention, you'll look, some of the illustrations and paintings in the game that you see are explorers' recollections or documentation of them exploring this continent. And it's all like piff hat, khaki, monocle, curled mustache explorers going out trying to figure out what this Pandician content has. And it is largely unexplored because people who go there don't come back. There's all kinds of like threatening wildlife, flora and fauna alike. Like, it's the most dangerous. It's basically like when in King Kong they went to the island and there's just bugs everywhere that ate everyone, and no one made it back except for the main characters. And I just thought this was super inspiring. And I actually brought, because I already own the Dishonored.
No way. Look at
the
that.
Dunwall Archives. I got it for my birthday one year, I guess. Or Christmas, maybe. Merry Christmas, yeah. But it has a map in it. Let me show you the map, just to give you an idea. Unfortunately, listeners won't see this, but can you see that? I can't see my screen. And
roughly.
Hold it. Basically, in this corner, you have the Isles. You see the whole thing.
I see you.
You see,
yep.
And it zooms in on it over here. Like we do with Hawaii on a map. Right. We zoom in on it. So this is why that's so large. Then over here is the Pandician Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it looks like if you were to imagine how the United Kingdom and Ireland are kind of split off from the rest of Western Europe. Comparatively in size and style, it appears.
Yeah, and so like you can think of the Isles as essentially Great Britain, and then the rest of the entire world on one continent. I think it's Pandician. I don't know what that means, but it sounds like Pangea, sort of. Mm-hmm. And it's everything else is in one continent, so they call it the Pandician continent. And no one talks about this, and so I thought I would talk about it because I think it's so freaking cool because like if you think about it, kind of not metaphorically, what's the word? I don't know. If you think about it as far as like the messaging of the game, a lot happens on the Isles. Like as small as it is the entire known world. It is relatively small compared to the rest of the world, but all this drama and stuff happens. All these conflicts between humans and kings and assassins and all these things happening on this tiny little speck on the world. Meanwhile, the entire rest of the world, which is this Pandician continent, is still out there looming over the horizon, like full of unknown, like basically they know 10% of the world and that's it. And so it's kind of a cool framing device for the civilization where it's like they're just barely hanging on. Humans are not the dominant species on this planet. In fact, in 2, you go to the Southern Isles, and they're struggling with the nature. Like, there's these giant mosquitoes and this like stuff infecting houses, and the mosquitoes will they'll create their houses and hives and stuff in people's homes, and they'll have to what is it called when there's some kind of toxin in the house and they have to cover it with a big sheet or whatever? They have to fumigate it or something.
Right. Fumigate.
There's a lot of houses that are closed off with those sheets because they're trying to isolate the infectious swarm of mosquitoes that are like these giant mosquitoes that you fight in the game. So yeah, humanity in this world is just barely getting by, despite the fact that there's like a whole pecking order as far as like the regal richy people at the top and the slum people at the bottom, and there's like rat plague and stuff. So I thought that was just a really interesting part of the lore of the world. And I don't think I've ever really gotten in as much to world lore in a game like this, like a first-person shooter. Like Half-Life, you don't think about what's really happening outside of City 17 or that much further out. I mean, maybe you can, but it's not like described in any way. You just assume the Combine took over the whole world or whatever. I just thought it was really cool, very like humble in a way to make your game take place on this really insignificant speck on the map, while like the rest of the world is unknown, and it's just this mystery, like lost world sort of situation. I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
And it makes me want a game that's set there where you go there and you explore and you see dinosaurs and stuff over there. And I just thought that was really cool.
That is cool. It's strange because like you never, I mean, to your point, you never hear anyone talk about that when it comes to Dishonored, right? It's all about like generally the gameplay of Dishonored and kind of the thematics and the setting and everything. But yeah, I had no idea there were like monocle bespeckled hunters going off into this, dinosaur infested world and not coming back.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
it does sound like a really
Totally in the
interesting
background.
universe. I like the idea of games that have a known universe that is a significantly smaller portion of the entire uh, universe. Yeah, like their world is part of a much larger universe, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
think it helps for the narrative too to have that framework already there.
yes, definitely. I think when you were talking about that, I had Disco Elysium in the back of my mind. Did you ever play Disco Elysium?
hmm No, but I do know about it. I think I might have seen some gameplay of it and
Okay.
stuff.
Like if you're not familiar, just a very high level recap. The Zaum Collective, who made Disco Elysium, it was initially this group of, I think, four friends who, over the course of like 10 years, built out they did a whole world building exercise, and they built this
Mm.
whole world that the game Disco Elysium ultimately takes place in. But Disco Elysium takes place in like a small city, Revachol, I think Revachol. Um, and Revachol is like part of a larger kind of state consortium, which is part of like a country, and that country is like connected to these other countries in these really interesting geopolitical ways because there was all this war and lots of context that you do get through the through line narrative of the game. So
hmm
not quite as distanced as it is in Dishonored, um, but it's still so interesting because there is just like they put so much depth into the development and the creation of this world. You kind of just want to know about how all these people sort of ended up in Revachol at the same time in the place that they are, because you're kind of just capturing a moment in Disco Elysium, um,
hmm
which is like emblematic of how the entire world has behaved previously in order to derive the conclusion that you are basically playing through. So if there was like I would absolutely eat up any other content, especially game wise, that had to do with the rest of the world. And I know they have books, and now that I'm saying all this out loud, like I really want to read, and maybe it's just one book. I really want to go out and read that though. Um,
hmm
but dude, it's okay. I had another thought. Like that's also why I used to read like the Halo and Gears of War books.
Expanded universe.
Yeah, totally. Like, but that universe that you're talking about with Dishonored, if there were books for that, like I could see that being really engaging.
There might
Um,
be. I mean, this is framed as an archive of history. So like
oh,
as
like
you read
written
through it, it
through
kind of
that perspective of someone like
it
actually
documents
archiving it.
like I don't know, maybe I haven't read it in a while. I think it's like because they talk about the plague and stuff in here. Um, yeah, I think it's like a bird's eye view sort of thing. There are notes here, like actual dialogue, like of letters written. There's character profiles. Um, all the different events that took place, at least in the first game, are kind of documented in here. They go over the different islands. This is kind of an expanded universe. Like it goes into it's a lore book essentially. It's not. It doesn't like tell a story within the universe, but
Gotcha.
it tells the lore to give you an idea of like what's because I think just like in Disco Elysium, like I'm sure there's things peppered throughout the world that expand upon or that at least reveal pieces of that world of that lore.
Hmm.
In Dishonored, if you were patient enough, you could read all the notes and stuff that you found and derive a bigger picture of the environment or of the world. I think most people overlook it because it is a first person shooter, essentially first
Yeah.
person stealth game, and they're kind of looking for the next objective. Personally, like I try to be the good citizen and read the notes, but I can't lie to myself and say that I'm really that interested when I just want to kind of explore the world. I'm
That
just not a very strong reader anyway,
that's how I felt with
yeah, and just
Skyrim with the 360 plus books or whatever that they have in
all
there,
the books and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them don't grab your interest right away, but some of them are fun and they're short enough. But with like Disco Elysium, like building that world, it really gives those developers that that resource
Hmm.
to make decisions and add quests and create more context for the characters. Because it's not just like a drunkard you're talking to. It's a drunkard who like drifted from this other part of the world, who has had an experience because they've already built the world out from that sort of thing or whatever. So as a narrative driven game, like that's much more appreciated, right, by the players to have all that context, have all that meat to the characters. Whereas Dishonored, I don't think people are always looking for that sort of thing. And I don't, honestly, I don't necessarily think it's there for Dishonored as it is for Disco Elysium, because they're completely different games. But as far as lore is concerned, that was something really interesting to find out about.
Let me ask you then, how does that make you think about world building as a developer?
Yeah, I mean, just like having made my own game with lore in it, I can see, because I have a very loose lore. And so I see the strengths and the weaknesses of having lore at all, because I'm lacking lore.
Okay.
Because I feel it when I'm missing context. When I'm creating something, I need context to make something. So I feel the lack of background when I'm making stuff. But then when I do have the lore to back it up, I'm like, yeah, that fits perfectly. Like, that's cool and that's interesting, and people can really get their teeth into that, and that kind of lines up with other things. So the strengths and the strengths of having it and the weaknesses of not having it, like I can feel that. And so yeah, I could totally see. I don't know about 10 years on lore. Like, they must have been making other things, right? While they were making that stuff.
I don't know.
Or
They were like anarchists. So I don't know if they were. I don't know what else they were doing.
Oh, they could have just been like, "F the man, we're not gonna make any.
Yeah,
we're not gonna."
I think so.
Get
they were
jobs.
students, maybe. I'm not sure. They made it work, though.
Maybe,
right?
But yeah, having that lore, just like Tolkien has for his universe, like having that background gives you all these footholds everywhere you go, wherever the story may go, to create a story there. And I mean, it can only help. To spend some time on lore, I think, is very important. To at least give yourself a contextual background to like reference when you need, because you'll run across, whether you're making gameplay mechanics or story things, like you need that context and stuff.
That's the thing, right? Is like that context eventually informs decision making related to the game, and that's why I could see it being really important. But it's super interesting, right? Because totally. Like, especially as an independent developer or even working at a smaller studio, like it's harder to give something that kind of consideration, because there's some studios that have historians dedicated to singular game franchises, right? Which is just wild. Because it's like you would have to do
lore
that.
Masters.
Yeah, you would have to do that for yourself. You'd have to be your own lore master. And to do that while you're doing everything else is just, it's a lot. But you can get this super rich and deep breadth of stories when you have that kind of well of knowledge and context to pull from. So it is super cool to think about. It's just, it's also hard to leverage, right? Like Dishonored 2 wasn't about stealth killing dinosaurs.
No, but that would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
It is almost like, it makes me wonder if it would be cooler left as a mystery, or if they should explore it in another game. Because half of me wants them to explore it, and the other half of me is like, gets goosebumps just thinking about it. Like the fact that it's not known by anyone. Arcane also created one of my favorite games, Dark Messiah: Might and Magic, which was a first-person game where you can kick people off of ledges.
Yeah, that's the only thing I remember.
And so I've been an Arcane fanboy since then, really. And since then I played Arx Fatalis, one of their previous games, which in its own right is an amazing first-person RPG. Really, really cool, especially if you like that era of graphics, that lo-fi graphics. I'm an Arcane fanboy, and I just want to see more in the line of that sort of thing. Then maybe, like, unfortunately they had some restrictive development.
We don't talk about Redfall. We don't talk about Redfall.
Like, I think conceptually Redfall's cool. Also, doesn't it take place in Massachusetts, or at least in New England, which is kind of like where it's where my homeland is.
Yes, that area of the world.
So it was kind of a shame to hear about kind of the struggle that studio underwent with that release. There's a whole topic in there too, right, with Microsoft and stuff.
Yeah.
But huge Arcane fanboy. I'd love to see more stuff with their current IP, like Dishonored, Dark Messiah. I mean, Dark Messiah isn't their IP, but I'd love them to do a magical fantasy, medieval game again with kicking.
With kicking.
Can't they just bring the kicking back? But they're such a free spirit. They make so many interesting things. Like Redfall, just the concept of it just out of nowhere, it's so off-brand that it's on-brand. And Deathloop as well, such a interesting concept for a game. And thankfully that project did pretty well. Their style is so cool. And honestly, just want a game with kicking back. And I feel like you could kick some dinosaurs. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, if you could stealth kick like a dinosaur, now we're talking.
Yeah, and just have it ragdoll off the cliff. Yeah, it'd be great to see more from them. But honestly, Dishonored is cool. I love the setting. It's very atmospheric. Yeah, very cool. Anyway, that was mine.
Right on. That's cool, man. Yeah, it's cool to think about world building. It's cool to think about world building as an exercise, because it is something that seems like it's really easy to forget about, right? But I
forgot about it for my project.
I like how a game like Dishonored, of all the games out there in the world, like that's the game that you wanted to show and tell with the world building aspects of. And I think that's
the only thing I can think of that was like, as far as world lore goes, I think that's the most interesting one that I've seen. Like, obviously Lord of the Rings, it has its whole expansive world. The Witcher, it has its own thing going on with the books. But all that stuff is pretty like par for the course as far as worlds go. It's like human dominated worlds with wars, with conflict, with magic, with different creatures. Obviously a lot of adventure left to do in the world, but never have I seen the majority of the playable known world so insignificant on the scale of the world space.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Pandician continent is a giant singular continent just looming out there, like dwarfing this little island, is very fascinating. And it's kind of like, I said metaphorical. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but there's something there that kind of gives more meaning and more significance and framing for the actual conflicts that happen on the Isles, and kind of makes you feel like we're just these like little specks having these little conflicts, and like there's all this drama between different empires or whatever. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is happening. It's kind of like when you think about looking at the Earth from the moon, you're kind of just like, it's just a tiny little, everyone's just these tiny little insignificant, it's a introspective, it kind of adds a layer of metaphor to the whole thing, to the whole world, which is otherwise is just an action stealth game. You can look at it so simply, or you can kind of like see beyond the veil and see how insignificant everything is compared to the rest of the world. And I thought that was it's a bold choice. It's a really cool and unique thing that I've never seen before. And the artwork that the artists generate, like the concept art and the paintings for in-world paintings that you see, are haunting and creepy and weird and scary. Like you see like creepy paintings of giant apes with their glowing, like glinting eyes in the dark. You see like weird Mothman kings and like, and everything is framed in the photos where you see the adventurers depicted as these tiny little guys, like trying to sneak around the boulder where there's a giant like King Kong standing on top. All just really cool. I could link you after. I don't know the artist's name, but there's a particular artist, maybe the art director even, who did the paintings for the second game, and he has all those on his like Instagram. You can see all these interesting, very creepy, eerie depictions of what people found on the Pandician continent when they went there, and if they even lived to tell the tale.
Right on.
I don't know. I was very inspired by that. It was pretty fascinating.
I think that's also a really cool lens to play the game through, like having that knowledge in that context, because then even though you are like, you're an insignificant dot or whatever, it's still like, and this is the world that I'm in as an insignificant dot, because you have like abilities with the rats and the mosquitoes and stuff. But like why you're able to do that. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Right on.
Loved it. I love seeing it. Yeah.
Well, that's
just
great.
a cool game. I don't know. Have you played Dishonored? Did you say that?
I
If you
played
played it
Dishonored. Not all the way
first
through.
time?
I played like most of it. I didn't play Dishonored 2 or any of the DLCs.
It's one of those games where like even the way people talk is stylized,
Mm-hmm.
and the way this book is written is stylized. So I really appreciate that level of lore building, where like things down to that level are stylized.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Loved
Right on.
it.
That's awesome.
What do you
man.
think? I think that's a wrap.
I think so too. This
All
has
right.
been cool though.
You want to send us off? Yeah, it's been great. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times. Yeah. Thank you all for taking part in playing out these stories. This has been Story Players with
Mm-hmm.
Buddy and myself. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm not gonna do the whole socials thing. Like we could put
Why
it
not?
in.
Why not?
We could
I
put
was
it in
waiting
show
for that.
notes or whatever. Do you want to? Well, okay. Here, you know what?
I want to
Instead
do
of
it.
socials, why don't you give a quick update on what you're doing with of Love and Eternity?
I'm gonna give my social.
All right. Okay.
And
Sure.
I'll do that. You can find me online at Acornbringer. Just the way it sounds, Acornbringer. It's a hybrid word. I am working on Of Love and Eternity, a kind of lo-fi throwback video game. Check it out. I urge you. It looks cool. I hope. But recently I put out, I guess I didn't mention this yet on the podcast, but I recently put out a tutorial on my workflow for creating 3D assets for the game. So kind of like a style showcase. If you're interested in the style of the game, you might be interested in that. That is currently up on my Patreon. You can find the Patreon at patreon.com/acornbringer or however that works out in the URL. Yeah, everywhere Acornbringer, you can find me. And just about ready to finish up the second area, which is a big swampy area. So look forward to seeing more on that. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that. If you follow me on Instagram or anywhere, you'll see updates on that. Or if you want updates even sooner, like I said, you can find all that stuff on Patreon. And I'd really appreciate your support.
Right on. Very cool.
And Zach, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on games that are not public yet, so
Ooh,
hard
still
to.
NDA.
One of them's NDA. The other one is the game that I'm working on that just we have a small little playable thing. It's not a complete game though, so
Mm-hmm.
throwing it up on itch or something wouldn't make a lot of sense. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on video games, so that's cool. Working on my rugby rhythm game, Rugbeat. Um, at the point now where one of the developers on the project implemented a very rudimentary version of AI, and it has unlocked so many thoughts about what the game actually is because of
Wow.
how chaotic in nature a real-time action rhythm game is. So now I'm reconsidering whether to change the core design of the game because it's just a prototype right now. I'm thinking about
Mm-hmm.
changing it into a tactics game that is like rhythmically inclined. So going
I
through that
see.
process right now, which is really fun. It's cool to like jam for a few weeks, have something that you can use to like draw conclusions and then make decisions based off of that. So I'm doing that, and then yeah, working on that NDA project, and
Very
it's cool.
cool.
It's cool, man.
I think once you're ready to show stuff from that game, you're going to want to share your socials on the pod.
Oh yeah, I mean, people can follow me on socials right now anyway. I think Twitter sucks. I don't really use Instagram very much. I'm on LinkedIn, kinda. Yeah, Zachary
Okay.
Snader. But yeah, socials. I'm Zulu Zach QC, ZULUZACH QC, as in Queen City.
Mm-hmm.
Or hit me up on Discord. I guess I don't know. I'm down to talk to
Oh,
people on
yeah.
Discord. Same.
Also on
Same
Discord
thing.
myself.
Right on.
Hit us up, chat us up, ask us questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. I mean, if people have any questions after hearing this, just hit us up on socials. But that'd be cool to have like a little server where people could just drop in and ask questions at least.
Oh, like a Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could talk
Let's
about
see how things pan out. The Discord will facilitate a desire, and we
Yeah.
need to make sure that desire exists first.
it. For sure. For sure.
We don't
Well,
even
yeah,
know if there's a desire for the podcast yet, so let's
That's-
wait for the stuff to.
That's true. I guess we
snowball a
haven't
little bit
formally
more.
closed this episode either. So that was Story Players, and thanks for listening. We appreciate having
Thank
you
you.
here.